Good morning. This is Dr. Hansa Das, Department of History, Nirmala College, Ranchi. Today we are going to discuss deindustrialization in colonial India, basically focusing upon the debate which surrounds the topic. Deindustrialization has been a much debated topic, and today we are going to view the different points of views put forward by different historians on deindustrialization. Deindustrialization of the Indian economy has been a recurrent theme in Indian economic history. India was supposed to have undergone it while under the British, primarily as a consequence of their commercial policies. The conventional doctrine starts with a notion of traditional India, a subsistence economy into which came the shattering influence of market forces represented by Western commercial and industrial competition, reinforced by the power of the modern imperial state. The issue is widely debated. There are two major viewpoints in this regard: the imperialist and the nationalist. The imperialist view of the Indian economy held that the pre colonial India was marked by high taxation, tremendous administrative chaos, political anarchy, and it was the British rule which ushered in a prosperous era of agricultural expansion and modernization. This view was propagated by scholars like Alfred Loyal, W. W. Hunter, and Moreland. The nationalists strongly refuted this contention and argued that there was hardly any economic development during the period. They emphasized colonial exploitation and considered commercial policy of the British, high import duty on Indian exports, and nominal tariff on British exports to India as the chief causes for the decline of old industries in the end of the 18th and beginning of 19th century. So first we have R.C. Dutt, who says that the manufacture of textiles, both silk and cotton, fell, and the resulting unemployment of artisans reduced India from the status of a manufacturing country to that of an agricultural farm. R.C. Dutt points out that by 1937, agriculture was the only quote unquote national industry of the people. Madan Mohan Malviya, another nationalist, who stressed that there was a deliberate sacrifice of Indian industries to serve British interests. The early nationalists reiterated their emphasis on poverty as a result of this situation, best exemplified in Dadabhai Naoroji's Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. They demanded state protection of Indian industries, banking facilities, and technical education. Now, we need to look at a comparison between the pre-British and British times. And for properly understanding the industrial situation in India, we have to actually make a comparison between the pre-British and British times. Now, historians have used various indices to show this difference. For example, Daniel Thorner is one historian who has made an occupational structure basis to study the concept of deindustrialization. Now, Daniel Thorner points out that the census figures of 1931 as compared to those of 1881 indicate a fall in industrial workforce and a rise in agricultural. But there are other factors to be considered. The accompanied decline of handicrafts is a feature that occurs in all countries when entering the industrial phase. The figures for manufacture and trade are taken together as a single category, as the rural worker was most of the times maker as well as the seller. Agricultural production was virtually constant and the industrial structure practically stationary. Thus, there is no support for the deindustrialization argument, and at the onset of the analysis, Indian economy was already agricultural. Now, J. Krishnamurthy, another nationalist historian, who disagrees and considers that it does not disprove deindustrialization. In fact, J. Krishnamurti believes that a more meaningful index will be the proportion of total industrial output to the total output, and it will give a fair idea of whether there was an upward or downward movement in industrial production. He also says that an entire household does not depend on one industry or activity only, and also the industrial worker was not engaged in any one activity only. Morris David Morris is very famous for his challenging the exploitative thesis. So, Morris David Morris challenges the exploitative thesis of the nationalists and points out that in a politically unstable and commercially weak state, the British brought stability, standardization, and efficiency. There was development in transport and communication, which stimulated economic activity. He believes that the notion that Manchester machine made textiles wiped out the Indian handicraft industry is wrong, for it actually strengthened the competitive position of the indigenous handlooms. Also, with a rise in per capita real income, the demand for cotton textiles in the Indian market registered an increase. The import of textiles was only to cover the rise of demand that could be satisfied by the internal market. Tapan Rai Chaudhary is critical of Morris David Morris and points out certain facts. Like he says that per capita income did not rise substantially, economy stagnated and was not growing, the modern sector comprised only extractive industries. Also, he makes clear that per capita income is not a reliable indicator of economic change. Now, we have Bipin Chandra who joins Tapan Rai Chaudhary in attacking Morris David Morris. Bipin Chandra emphasizes the structural aspect of the Indian economy, and he states figures and shows that the import of cloth increased between 1849 to 1899. If the artisans survived, they did so by cutting into their capital and subsistence. There is no evidence of increase in artisanal population, and Bipin Chandra goes on to say that Morris David Morris gives no evidence of the increase of per capita income which he is talking about. Bipin Chandra concludes that economic forces were inhibiting industrial growth at every stage. Now, we take a case study of the handloom industry, and we'll try to understand through this case study whether actually deindustrialization was taking place or not. So, a detailed examination of the handloom industry will show the actual condition. Now, Buchanan Hamilton is one historian who has made a survey of the districts of Purnia, Bhagalpur, Patna, Gaya, and Shahabad, that is the Gangetic Bihar region, gives figures for the population supported by industries in 1809 to 1813. And Amiya Kumar Bagchi has compared them with those of the 1901 census figures and has shown that there was an absolute fall in the population supported by industries. But Vixeni has disputed his use of figures on several accounts. This is so because categorization becomes difficult as families and individuals were engaged in multiple activities and could not be classified under one occupation. So, if we make an analysis of the industrial trends, the manner in which each distinct industry was flourishing, we could get some idea as well. Now, so an analysis of specific industries would show the different trends. For example, cotton and silk textiles underwent a massive decline, as also woolens, but not carpet making. Leather industry faced stiff competition. Metal and woodwork and pottery did reasonably well. Rice processing industries remained unaffected up to the beginning of the 20th century. So finally, we could say that in structural terms, the textile industry remained important as a field of employment despite the fact that underemployment became increasingly significant, and it remained an integral though marginalized part of the Indian economy. But when we are talking about the complexity of changes that occurred in Indian economic life under the impact of British rule, to talk about industrialization and destruction of textile industry would be too simple. Thank you.